Great. So I think that's us looking fairly full at the minute, and might have a few others join us throughout the presentation. But thank you for all coming along tonight. I would just like to say hello from myself. I'm Kristen Miller and I'm Chart's Communication Marketing Manager. So I'll just give a quick kind of tech overview for this evening, and just let you know if anybody's having difficulty seeing me. I'm a white female. I've got kind of medium-ish long dark hair, and I'm dressed all in black today, and I'm in my home office, which is very warm. As you can see, I'm quite flushed as it's been boiling 20 degrees for me today here. So just a reminder to everybody that this event is recorded, and if you wish to take your cameras off, please feel free to do so. I'd also appreciate if you could keep yourselves on mute throughout the speakers' presentations, but I welcome you to put on your microphones when we open up the Q&A, or use the chat function if you prefer to do so. I'd also like to say if you have any kind of technical issues or any difficulty throughout tonight, you can also message me on the chat and I can see how I can help you as well. Tonight we do have live interpretation from our brilliant interpreter Ian McClare, who's absolutely wonderful and fantastic. So you can access this translation on your bottom of your screen. It might show up as interpretation. If not, you can go to the more option, and within this it's under interpretation, and simply choose the English channel, and this will allow you to listen to the Gaelic audio from our presenters. The welcome introduction will be given in English and the presentations will be given in Gaelic. During the Q&A, we invite participants to speak in whichever language they prefer, and Ian again will provide translations for us. I'd also like to say if you have any difficulty hearing, we do also offer closed captions. Unfortunately, due to limitations of Zoom, these are only available in English. And tonight is facilitated by our wonderful Gaelic Culture Officer, who's been with us since 2022, who's funded by Rhona NicDhùghaill and also supported by our Gaelic Beauty Council, and who does a fantastic job. And this is, of course, our man Àdhamh Broin, who is absolutely wonderful and will be facilitating the conversations between our four artists this evening. So without any hesitation, I'll just hand over to Àdhamh.
Well, it's only disappointment from here on in then, eh? That's a high bar to meet. Thanks so much, Kirsten. Marcas and Gina Macdonald. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming along. It's Michelle Broin, Oifigear Cultair Ghàidhlig. So Àdhamh Broin, Gaelic Culture Officer here at Charts. So to kick off with, I would just like to give a wee overview of what this project is all about. Before I do that, though, just as Kirsten did, I am a middle-aged fella with a red beard, a little less hair than was perhaps the case a year or two ago, spectacles, and I'm also dressed in black. So this project was AITHNE, or AITHNE, depending on dialect, was a pilot project commissioned by Engage Scotland, and the project has been delivered as a partnership between Charts and Engage, and it was made possible with the support of the National Lottery through Creative Scotland. A little bit about us here at Charts, for anyone who does not know us. Charts is Culture, Heritage and Arts Assembly, Argyll. We're a member-guided charity that supports the arts, culture and heritage sectors in Argyll and the Isles. We very much engage in promote collaboration in our work to sustain cultural development in Argyll and Bute. And we also have our director, Kathleen, with us this evening. I'd like to introduce you now to Jane Sillis from Engage, who can give a brief overview of the work that Engage delivers. Thanks very much, Jane.
Thank you so much. So my name's Jane Sillis. I'm director of Engage. I'm sitting in a very white room in London. It's 26 degrees here. I've got grey hair and a rather flushed white face. So it's such a privilege being here this evening, and it's been a real honour working with Charts on this partnership. And I really just wanted to thank Charts, and all of you who've participated in the partnership, and also Creative Scotland for supporting the work that we're doing together. Engage is a UK-wide organisation supporting engagement and participation in the visual arts, particularly the visual arts workforce. I'm representing Engage Scotland and our wonderful coordinator, Sarah Robinson-Frood, this evening. And the work that we're doing with Charts is complements many other streams of work that we're able to develop with the workforce in Scotland, including training and awards. So do look at our website, and I'm really looking forward to this evening and hearing all of your reflections. So thank you so much.
Well, Marky Jane, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks very much.
So I'll just chat a wee bit now about this survey, the AITHNE survey. Completed survey is available online from Engage Scotland, and it's also on the Charts website. I don't know, maybe Kirsten, we could pop a couple of links in, and then folk can have a wee scoot through to that if they fancy it. So the project, it's a starting off point, I suppose you could say, and the 37 responses from artists across Scotland create a new resource that maps I suppose, the very tip of the iceberg, really, of visual arts working within visual artists, I should say, working within a Gaelic context. So the spread of response was genuinely impressive. The 37 number might seem low, but the breadth of response that we got was just absolutely fantastic. And it's just impressive, the coverage we've got. It's strictly participatory visual arts context, but also many things adjacent to that as well. And likewise, as well as receiving strong responses from Gaels themselves, which is always a pleasure, given that our voices can sometimes find themselves sort of unheard over the broader din, shall we call it. We also receive responses from people who don't come from Gaelic backgrounds, but who see the language and culture as crucial to their work. So really very, very interesting indeed. We're delighted to host these two online events, because there is also one a week tonight, and I'll talk a wee bit about that at the end of this evening's session. These two events will showcase two elements of what has been gleaned from the survey results, and they do mark the end of this pilot stage of the Commission and the end of Chart's official engagement in this project as things stand. So during this event tonight, our speakers will share highlights from their practice, and will be around during our Q&A, as Kirsten said, to discuss the themes, and of course also both the challenges and opportunities that come up within the Gaelic arts sector. So this event's a chance for artists working within Gaelic culture and language to connect, reflect and learn from each other, and we hope that it will take its place as part of an ongoing conversation on how best to support and strengthen the creative networks of Gaelic artists across Scotland. So it just remains to say, before I introduce our fantastic speakers for tonight, a huge Gramore and Maaki, huge thanks to everybody who contributed and who shared their practice through filling out the questionnaire. Because at the time that the questionnaire went out, there was quite a few other questionnaires on different topics going around at the time, and so one question, a questionnaire can sometimes feel like the last thing that people want to spend their time on. So we were absolutely thrilled that we get such a rich response back, and it's so incredibly helpful. And if you follow the link through, which we'll be knocking about somewhere, you can see the map and you can see where people responded from, which areas that they're working in, which is an incredibly helpful thing to know who's out there. And hopefully that map will become more detailed as time goes on. And it will allow our artists to raise their own profile, by showing where they are and therefore where they engage from. So it's a perfectly relevant cliche to use to say, without further ado, it's enough gassing from me. And I'd very much now like to introduce you to our four speakers. We've got Gina Macdonald, Oliver Mezger, Marcas Mac and Tuairneir, and Rhona NicDhùghaill, who will each be talking about their work for around about the quarter of an hour mark. They'll do so mostly in Gaelic and in Gaelic na Halaban, but we do have the fantastic Ian Oifigear, as you are now well aware, with us tonight to translate for those of us who are not quite so proficient in the Fingalian tongue. I'm going to hand over to Gina Macdonald now, who is very proficient in the Fingalian tongue. And I can't wait to see what you're presenting on, Gina. I've had a look at it already, and it looked absolutely terrific. But really looking forward to hearing you expound on the topic. So, whenever you're ready, Gilmore Mataki.
Good evening, thank you. I'm happy to be here tonight, seeing you and listening to everybody. I'm Gina Macdonald from North Uist. I've had both languages since I was young, that's Gaelic and English, and the culture and the heritage is a big part of my life. I've always valued arts, but it's only when I grew up I did a degree at the Tuairneir, which is part of the UHI University. I thought, what subject should I do? And the advice I got was to follow the subject that I knew. So that's what I did. The habit in heritage to transfer heritage in a line, and there are lines in every part of our life and in nature as well, but maybe we as people don't use it as well as animals do. Lines can be connected to many things, but today I'm following the line of the family. So the recent generations, the habit was to name children after their parents and their grandparents in a pattern. This is my family tree here, but that's in the English version. This has left a lot of grandchildren with the same names because they followed on the father's side, most importantly, and the first son was named after the father's father, his grandfather, and the second son named after the grandfather on the other side, on the maternal side, the mother's father. So the slonneag, as it's called in Gaelic, which is the same sort of pattern for the girls, but I never heard it done from the women's side. The only time you would hear that would be if the woman had some sort of importance in the place, a doctor, for example. Since the same names were used, there had to be something to tell which part of the family you came from, who you belonged to. This is just trying to show this through art. So I recorded my late brother reciting his family patronymic. That's it on the left there in Gaelic. So this is it in Gaelic. So listen to the rhythm. The names are used from through telling, through oral recitation.
Is misje aan, ich gruadi, ich canny, ich gruadi, ich gan ruig, ich gaal, ich gan ruig, ich gunachi, ich ewan.
So you can see at the top that I've incorporated the sound wave of him talking. So the rhythm and the pattern comes through. Then I thought, what else should I do? So I made a code regarding every letter. So there's a pattern comes through. There's only 18 letters in the Gaelic alphabet, and I only needed 14 for this pattern. Yeah, you have to do a wee bit of mathematics so that you don't lose the pattern. But we'll not go too deeply into that at the moment. But the thing it shows is generation, the slonnig, so this is shown in with knitting in between 7 women. So this shows the colours in the islands, and you can see that I use the traditional Harris wool yarn. So we're always used to knit the big stockings. So use the 4 big wooden pins for knitting on knitting needles. So you can use the same code for other things. So, this is a song by a local poet talking about the, well, praising Uist, praising North Uist. And this is it being sung by a local singer, Mairet Callan.
Shemeshi fate vo hith miolish with lebron go close at me. Von hangian alas camleon cunyoli Àdhamh gur sharam. Viachimi di chet modiol angudin ors to tuanakmo. Edo yesh chingalano charamanyod says pars the goy and loy a hound. Molach langa snur de chemi vedin jin huiv nacha. Setr me jaris machine jack chidig de shagwal en jeich. Moch geschier si chid mai si templa and loy a hound. Si eleni barogai eden drai get streich morlan ga
Once it's finished, you can see the line at the bottom. So that's just a section of North Uist in a lane, and the knitting is quite like that. So when I'm knitting just now, I look out of the window and I can see the island that was in the song that you heard. If you don't know the poetry, it's really excellent language that he uses. Very often we see heritage as something that looks backwards, but I use it as a frame for growth. Between the words from Barnes, there are 2 things happening at the same time. It's connecting with the time, the past and the future. Everybody who's steeped in their culture accepts without question, and you think that everybody has this connection. Very often people think that cultures and heritage are against spreading knowledge, but this is just lack of confidence. Once language comes in front of the majority of people, Without the language and the environment, how can we connect this to Gaelic? I try to pass over my own understanding as best I can. But we have art that belongs to our culture. Very often we use the word brí, which means essence, when we talk about songs or art. And it tells us something beautiful about the importance of it in the viewpoint of the Gaels. So this is the knowledge of the generations and the families. I don't have the words to that you have. It's very beautiful the way you were speaking there. So we'll leave Gina. So there'll be opportunity for questions at the end if anybody has questions. It'd be really good to hear questions. So thanks very much.
So we're now hand across to Oliver.
So we're going over to Oliver now.
How are you feeling, sir? Look at me.
Oh dear, dear, dear. Good evening, everybody.
Mezger.
So my name is Oifigear Mezger. I'm a husband to Jessica and the father to Hugh and Eve. I'm a filmmaker and a PSA assistant at the primary school, the Gaelic primary school in Edinburgh. I'm proud to be a Gaelic learner, a New Gael, and a Gaelic medium education Gael. I'm a presenter of the Psalms, someone who sings the tune of the Psalms in a Presbyterian church, so the other people can follow it. There are no organs in the church. I'm passionate about Jesus Christ and the influence he's had in our culture, or on our culture. I'm neurodiverse, I have dyslexia. I'm very aware that I don't view the world like someone reading a book in straight lines. So I don't always follow the conventional approach. I'm a director of experimental films. I make handmade films, mixing my own chemicals from plants and the kitchen cupboard. I work with the communities in my films by facilitating creative workshops, interweaving the ideas of the films and the concerns of the community that came down to us. In 2008, my first project after leaving the GSA to organise workshops at the CCA, the Arts Centre in Glasgow. in psalm singing in Gaelic and English. I made the film Blue Veil, White Veil Psalmody to reflect my interest in these forms of worship and linked them to high flats in the East End of Glasgow.
Improvisations, I guess, noten.
So the film sang the building, exploring the improvisation and the graces in Gaelic psalmody, and the names of the residents. This marked the beginning of my Gaelic journey.
It's 2012, I guess
2014. Between 2012 and 2014, I was artist in residence at Timespan in Helmsdale in Sutherland. I'd no Gaelic then, but I made work here with the older people, breaking down the barriers to digital technology.
And
then a film that was interwoven with the legacy of celebrated Arcadian filmmaker Margaret Tate. In the 1960s, Margaret Tate had lived close to Helmsdale, and she made a film called Cuireadh, The Big Sheep. This would be about the sheep coming in as a cause of the clearances in Sutherland, presumably. Tried to raise questions about the memories of this film. Was it a reliable memory? What is the language of memory? And how do we participate in these memories?
Gaelic, the Gaelic Sanatcha Shaw.
There was Gaelic in this place. How could I engage with it? I worked with lots of people who had dementia. I tried to stimulate their minds and memories through my work. We named many people and places that were in the film. Before this, I came from living in London for 4 years. That's where the influence, the strong influence of Hans Ulrich Obrist at the Serpentine Gallery was very strong. and he spoke about a new kind of museum, curator and participation. And it was a curatorial intern to Francesco Manicorda for the exhibition Radical Nature at the Barbican Art Gallery.
Rain mi raunsahig an altere Ghàidhlig agus systems theorist Buckminster Fuller.
I did research on the architect, designer and systems theorist Buckminster Fuller, and all these ideas have influenced my work.
In 2014,
I completed my film, Margaret Tate for the sake of Margaret Tate. By that time, I had grown an interest in the Ceolmór, the big music of the bagpipes, the classical music of the bagpipes, and I put this together with experimental poetry. I was influenced by Àdhamh Part and by Ian Hamilton Finlay and concrete poetry. I like how Gaelic words and sounds emerge from this poem. This chant poem and an interest in Cultairneir, the way of singing bagpipe tunes by mouth. I learned from Barney V. Brown that opened the way to my John Schuler presidency at Solmor Ostic.
Ma, here, my ear, I hear, I my ear, here am I, here I'm I hear, I here, here, ma, I, here.
Jons mi voban mi Brown. Gu vuncheris elan an an Solmor Ostig agus scholarach John Schuler scholarship.
So this led to this scholarship in Solmor Ostic. In 2015, I was able to join the short courses on the Isle of Skye at Solmor Ostic, the Gaelic college there, and I participated in the Líne symposium and exhibition, and presented my film Fór, which means autumn, noise, sound, note, blow. This film
shot a really ounce commerced
the outcome of what became apparent to me that I could parallel the manner of my own learning
córag agus an ceann
And speaking in relationship to Gaelic through the constructions, I observed in the contemporary architecture of Skye. And borrowed from work done on Cultair music by the Altpebrach Club by Barnaby Brown and the late Dr. David Hester. Along with the piper Oliver MacDonald. And this work has led me to where I am today.
He me. Cuckoo, cuckoo, Hana Sul, Kunda Hul, Chi. Ochwach, Coeca ha Yolish, and the crow shaw. Ochwach. Cuckoo, cuckoo, Vovo, Ochwach, Coashin, Himi Guer, Stranger, a Chrottle. Jalen gan bechelten, Schnach bechitten, a Vaun.
In 2018,
in 2018, I did an Ansulchen residency for Lanter, which is the art gallery in Tuairneir in Lewis, and Baltus Community Trust, again in the island of Lewis. And they supported me to take my first visit. And this allowed me to take time to respond and consider the area around. Zulchen, around in Zulchen. A memorial for the land struggle in Reef. I started to explore the lines of sight from the memorial. It points straight out to the island of Papai Vor, which is a Norse word, the priest's island.
tai spiritual year and shin chempel.
So there's a legacy of an ancient spiritual house of God there, a temple as it's called in Gaelic, temple,
Spiritual
architecture that has inspired me to explore the spiritual landscape of Valtas and Apaivor. I'm continuing to develop this initial research by now writing a script for a radio play alongside the community, local and in exile. I'm revealing learning of the ancient and modern forces of fate and Sabbath in this place. So thanks, everyone. Thanks very much, friend. And what a breadth of content there, and especially talking about Helmsdale, some of my own ancestry and my wife's ancestry were expelled from Strathili, which is the valley behind.
So next up,
Next is Marcas Mac and Tuairneir.
How are we feeling, Kirsten? Are we in decent shape?
Ready?
Techie stuff moving from section to section.
Marcas, how are you? Are you ready to start? Yes, seems yes. Thanks very much for this opportunity once again. Will I say at the start? Yes. So I'm Marcas Mac and Tuairneir. I'm in Edinburgh. I'm a bit afraid. I'm sitting here in front of a shelf of books. I'm a poet, and my head's getting grey, as it's two of the Gaelic poets say about their poetry, Marivor and Ghàidhlig. So we'll go forward to the next slide now, and maybe you can hear from my Gaelic. I was born and brought up in New York, in England, and I gained an honours degree in Gaelic Aberdeen University, and then after that I started to, as a postgraduate, to take an interest in writing poetry. So my first poem in Gaelic was published a university magazine, and then I did another degree in writing fiction for television. That's where I got my first commission as a drama scriptwriter for the stage, and I got a commission for playing a pint in Oranmore in Glasgow. And this is about taking the story forward from the view that was in front of me at that time, and it was good to see my writing on the stage performed. I was always a poet, and when I moved to Inverness, I met lots of these people, such as myself, and other people, and I won prizes for poetry
salon litachas na Gaeltach gown agus
the literary salon of the Highlands, and that pushed me onwards to publishing with support from the Gaelic Books Council. And my first book, Jaw, came out 2013 with poetry in Gaelic and English, both on either side. So I've been in performances, readings from then on. I've been carrying on as a poet. Second book was in 2016. And then I'm involved in drama again, writing a play in poetic form for a local group called Trosk, and I was singing in that at the time with various people that lived locally. So that was a professional commission. Then I moved to Edinburgh, where I'm now, where I'm a poet in residence at the Balmoral Hotel for the children that visit the place. And I work with children to help make poetry from their own stories for birthdays or weddings, or a souvenir of a trip to Edinburgh. And that's carrying forward this work. In 2017 onwards, I started on a film of poetry. So, film was in Oifigear, book 2. You can see it at the bottom there. And then in 2020, the best Scottish poems. So that's the best that's published in Gaelic, Scots and English. So it was an honour for me to be in that shortlist. And then my third book appeared, Dúlach. Involved in music then as well. I was always involved in choirs in Govan and in Inverness. And now I'm the tutor for Lothian Gaelic Choir, and I sing in it as well. And I was in Inverness, and afterwards I was involved in writing new songs with Marianne Kennedy, Nick Turner, and Gilly Mackenzie put the tune to my poem Spectrum. Songs so I've brought out a pop CD. That's the first time that's happened in Gaelic, as far as I know. It's not the sort of so this is he's going very, very fast. So this isn't your average pop. This is so I made a music video as well for that. So this you can community people, especially in Edinburgh, but further afield as well. So I continue with films as well. Quite often I cooperate with Alex Nichol, who lives in Glasgow, work together, and we make kind of alternative films. And we got a commission from Longter, Hands Across the Sea, where we put two films together based on my poetry. And I've been carrying on with my writing. Polaris, my final book, my latest book, that appeared on the shortlist for Poetry of the Year for the Cultair Society. And it took in translation from poets from other languages, from Ireland, Manx, Irish, Cornish, and so forth. So that was our community participatory project. Spectrum appeared in 2023, and I carried on with music videos, some with Alex, some with other people. Once was Tonight. Eventually I won a prize, an international prize. The Wigton Poetry Book Festival, the Wigton Book Festival. So I'm going to be doing work in writing in English now, because he's not finishing up with Gaelic, but he will be working in English from now on in the short term. So as you can see, I'm involved in various things. And very often these projects hit more than one nail. For example, Polaris that took in poetry, but also tunes and songs. Some have been recorded, translation, various other community efforts. So you can see that I'm involved in music, poetry, community events. Could look at two particular projects. A film I made with Alex, Hands Across the Sea. This was a film based on poetry that I wrote for Dúlach, one of his books, about characters in the folklore of Wales.
No, we'll go back. I'll tell you in a minute. So yeah, my Drawn, Dolomax,
the Maidin Broin, that's the one on the left, that's an Uarach. Maidin Broin, the story of Seal Woman. By using this as a way of looking at violence that happens in the home that affects women especially. I was giving evidence to that as a poem that brings in my own voice, as opposed to other films where I use voiceovers, and stock films and historical films. This one is based on film that was filmed by Alex, and we're tying in language to play with the way the Gaelic meanness, the way that the Gaelic media appear always with burnt-in subtitles. So you've no way of avoiding these English subtitles, I should say.
Yeah, so we can move on to the next slide now and play the film. Thank you.
Hánig sin as an nuadach. Sínte roin fa brat snachke. Snaidje an sin ma jalav kian hírel. Chonnig mi arsinjach na waia foin. Connart, stré. A réir géile a chrekken sévichtje. Hook a fallavan sin an nuas na sehach. Ganig sin or a chwataich. Jaarste as mag réim arain, a chaid sin traia go féadach a grúnta. Hucag mi trochriachan míhig sin. Sin for an de gás cruchan cylda sia gorama. Sia tar ein stríd is a gilad gáin. Feeding yidach a yultag granan uach. A yiach rachag múchach talav na cruniach.
More than thanks. So we'll go back to the third slide, if that's okay, please. So sin film a chud mistake kujach kasan film
entered for the competition film G. That's the second film we made. With translation done by Johan Sandberg. Others in the north of Sweden who works in Irish, Swedish and Sami, the local Sami language. We used that to create connections between the community of the Gaels here in Scotland and the Sami Tuairneir community in the Arctic. So playing with animation and images on the screen and subtitles, and they have the same thing, of course, put up with the subtitles. So apart from these projects that have been done with the communities, I was involved with the project AITHNE. So I appeared so we created a big public poem on a large bit of paper, and everybody had the opportunity to put their own tail down. They had been working with local place names. And we noticed also that the Scots influence was strong in that community. So it was graffiti art that the murals in the community. So people were illustrating the paper as well as writing books on it. So that was in amongst the culture of and the heritage of the local district. So this takes us to the music video Broin talking. So unfortunately I've been involved to he's talking about COVID, so he couldn't actually so because of the funding I got from Scottish Arts, I had to work inside basically. So I was sort of dancing about like an idiot in my own bedroom, but it was seen publicly on YouTube, and I asked other people to appear and to show before it's tint as the viewer of the so there were Irish people involved, people from Cornwall and so forth. So there's an opportunity to give people to oppose the sort of The criticism that you hear publicly of Gaelic, despite the Gaelic Act, which has passed through Parliament. So this is a sort of homemade piece of work. So I got the chance to work with Alex again and do a finished production with her in the studio, but we managed to keep the qualities of the community in the video. I worked with Rob Thomas, a Welshman who's now living in Manhattan. So I recorded it in Leith, a song, and sent it digitally to him. The distance, you can see there, Marianne Kennedy. She was the chief producer in Scotland. This is Broin.
Come you
speak.
Well, more than thanks on the
That's it. So thanks very much for listening to me. So I'll put the information about my website here.
No.
Oh, he's going to put it in the chat. What a song. You know my opinion of what you do, but every time I play that song, I think it's really special. And bread in the work. I've been following what you do for years, but when you see it all together, it's great altogether. No. It's Rhona. Are you ready? And she's just getting her screen up there. Now, everybody can see it, I think.
Okay.
So, good evening. And thanks to Charts for giving me an opportunity to speak to you today. I'm Rhona NicDhùghaill. I've got a kind of red hair. She's actually in London just now, visiting friends there. So I'm using their standing desk. So I'm taller than they are, so I'm kind of bent over trying to get into the screen and the camera. I'm from Oban, and that's what you can see in the screen there. So that's where I do most of my community artwork. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about myself and about my work in general and about one or two projects that I've done recently. So I'm starting here with a few pictures of my family, my parents, my grandparents, and two of my great-grandparents, on my mother's side. They all lived in Oban as adults, but my two grandparents grandfathers were brought up in Little Islands, Airishkay and Iona. And I've got connections as well with Euston Vara, Kerrer and Lismore, as well as the mainland of Lauren. So although we had Gaelic in the family, both myself and my parents were brought up with Gaelic as the first language, but with a knowledge of Gaelic to an extent. But I always felt it was wrong that I wasn't fluent in Gaelic, and I decided to learn it properly, and that's what I did. After I'd graduated, I spent a year at Sulmarostic, the Gaelic college in the Isle of Skye. And it's in the family, and there are poems and the ceilidhs that used to happen in them, with stories and songs and so forth, that I learned how important that art and culture was. And it's just a normal thing. In the old days, there used to be a ceilidh house in every little village in the Ghàidhlig where people would come together socially for songs and poems, stories, music, conversation, debate, and working at the same time very often. So everybody took part in it. There was no difference, no split between artists and audience. So there are sort of ceilidh houses still in the Gaelic culture, and you can see the same sort of philosophy in the work of the Féishin. Féislarna, for example, I went when I was young. So my artistic work is based on that sort of philosophy. I work in the community in a collective and inclusive way. I'm not so comfortable with art as a professionalized thing. I've got questions about that. Or even the word artist itself, I'm not very comfortable with. There is something quite Gaelic about this philosophy. working in groups. You can find the same sort of thing in the famous essay that Raymond Williams wrote in 1958 called Culture is Ordinary. Here's a wee bit from it that I liked when he talked about the split between high culture and folk culture. And she's just reading through that, so I'll not bother reading out what she's saying.
Certain things culture and then separate them as with a park wall from ordinary people and ordinary work. At home we met and made music, listened to it, recited it, listened to poems, valued fine language. I've heard better music and better poems since. There is the world to draw on. But I know from the most ordinary experience that the interest is there, the capacity is there. Culture is ordinary. Through every change, let us hold fast to that. Hashin Said Migavichin
pretty fitting for Gaelic culture. So now I'm talking about music and songs, as Williams does here, and they're a big part of my work. Poetry as well, to an extent. So visual art hasn't appeared yet. I know. It doesn't have the same social function, maybe. But I'm going to talk to you now about two projects in which visual art is a big part as well. And you can see that the various types of art are connected and intermingled. So this is in Tuairneir in Morven, a place that's at the heart of the project, Leaving St Kilda, that I did in autumn 2020, 90 years after St Kilda was evacuated. So the evacuation boats came into Morven and Oban, and so I was working with people who had roots in these two places to celebrate that, or commemorate that. I wasn't trying to tell the story of the St Kilda people. I was asking the question, what did that bit of history mean to us 90 years onwards in these two communities? And I went to 5 women who had some sort of artistic practice. Katie Harris MacLeod, Kirsty MacDonald, Rhona NicDhùghaill, Sheila Quillan, and my own sister, Mara MacDougall. And I gave them an invitation to make 3 creative things to answer that question. So Sheila was brought up in Morven, and she told me a story about this place, in Tuairneir, and how the St Kildans were put to work there at forestry when they left St Kilda. And they were so good at climbing, they'd been climbing the rocks and the cliffs in St Kilda to get birds' eggs, so they could plant trees as high up as this without any difficulty, and other people couldn't reach them. And they're still there, the trees. So I went to Tuairneir to see this, and I found another story there that there was a township there that itself was cleared before the wood was planted by the St Kilda people. And that actually, when the trees were felled in the 90s, the village reappeared, or the ruins of it reappeared. So I took pictures there, took photographs there amongst the trees, and then this is the piece of visual art that I put in myself to the project. And if you go to the website, the project's website, you can see a slideshow of pictures here. There's some more from the wood. Agus na hirstich, agus cruútíre hirst cúteach. Agus méirig ring the piece. This is the final bit. This is crottal maps, crottals lichen pictures that I took out of a walk I had in the woods in Àdhamh. And again, if you go to the website, you can read a little about these pieces, and there are recordings of stories that go with them as well. So Sheila Quillen did part of the visual arts side of the project as well. And this is where Suler is, and pictures I took myself, and Katie Harris MacLeod made a video, and this is still from the video amongst other visual artistic pieces. And over and above these bits, there are poetry by Kirsty, creative writing by Mara, and songs by Rhona. And I'd recommend very much that you go to the website to see and hear these pieces. So most of you know the word that's been mentioned already today, dúchas. It means heritage. It's difficult to translate to English, but it's about the connection that we have with the land and with the heritage and our roots and what we get from the people that came before us. So maybe instead of calling it visual art, we should call it dúchasach art that belongs to the local heritage and community. So before I finish this, I want to talk about another project. It's called Shenartown, based in Oban. I did this in 2022, and again, I was working with a group of partners, participants, other people from the area, and people who called their grandfather Shenar rather than grandpa or granddad or whatever. And I knew plenty of families like that who called their grandfather Shenar, although they themselves didn't have Gaelic. So that was interesting for me as an example of Gaelic identity. And after talking with my neighbour, who was called Shenar as well, I wanted to do a project asking the question, what does it mean to us that we still use Gaelic words every day, even though we don't speak Gaelic fluently? So I sent out a call to other people that used the word Shenar for grandfather, and I had conversations with various people in the town on that subject, about the history of their family, questions of identity, about the relationship they had or didn't have with Gaelic. And together we chose pieces from these conversations to put on posters around Oban, quotes, and we made a short film with the best parts that the group put together. So you can see that on the website as well. So I invited here's the other participants, and I invited the group to send me creative answers to the conversations we had, or creative responses, and you can see them all again on the website by pressing on the various pictures here. So this isn't just a visual arts project. The creative responses bring in poetry, stories, pieces of writing and songs as well. Here's one example from Lindsay Gillis, with pictures from the family croft, the family farm, and a few sentences from her about how she learns traditional ways of working from her father, who's now a shenner, a grandfather to her daughter. And there's a lot more to be seen on the website. So the conversations we had as part of this project, the connections between us, the relationships between us are just as important or more important than the pieces of art came at the end. We're not aiming for high art here, but to me that's not putting it down. In Gaelic, we often talk about the value of pieces of art by using the word bri, again, that Gina used earlier on, substance or energy, zest, significance, and so forth. Difficult to translate. In Gaelic culture, participatory art or community art, and in my own work as well, everything doesn't have to be quite as polished or skillful. If it has bri, it's valuable. The singer and scholar from Ireland, Lilias O'Leary, talks about a Gaelic aesthetics of meaning. I think that's to be found in the word bri. So that's it for me, and I'm aware I never spoke today about another project that's called Tuairneir with Alice Stillman, and I got an island residency from Charts a year or two ago, but it's not really a visual art project, this, but I just wanted to say that myself and Alice will be running workshops in autumn through Scottish Artists Union with support from Charts as entry sessions for artists that are working in the Highlands, both local people and new people that come in who have an interest in Gaelic culture and what we can learn from it. So there'll be more information coming out about that shortly. But in the interim, I want to say that we're very grateful to Charts and the Scottish Artists Union for supporting that. And that's it for me. So a few links there for the projects I was talking about, and thank you all for listening to me. Although it was full of brie, it was beautiful as well. Very steeped in tradition. And I heard what you were saying about the St Kildans, about being good at climbing, but the people, the Morven people said that they used to scream rather than speaking, because they used to scream because they lived out on an island out in the sea, and they were shouting up the rocks against the wind and the sound of the sea. So that's it then. So 100,000 thanks to everybody who spoke and told us about what they were doing over the years. So we're going to have a conversation now. So everybody who was speaking, well, was on the panel, as they say today. As we said earlier, if you have any questions, you can put them in either Gaelic or in English. So, any questions in either Gaelic, Scots or English? And the opening question, and I'll translate them if they're in Gaelic. This conversation, which I reckon will last for about the next 20 minutes. If anybody has to go before then, of course, no problem at all. Very open question to start with, very simple question, just to get the blether going. And this one just goes to our panel as a whole, so whoever feels like pitching in on this. How would you yourselves like to see artists and organisations best working together to support your language and culture? And they want to pitch in on that one.
I could have a wee go.
and I'm not just saying this because it's a Charts event, but what Charts is very good at is making space, leaving space, not quite sure what the term is, but for Gaelic culture, for Gaelic ways of working, ways of doing things, for something that might be slightly out of the generally understood ways of doing things, or ways of valuing things, or ways of prioritizing things. Quite often when working with organizations, especially if you're on your own and you're the only kind of Gaelic artist or worker, it can be quite difficult to get across the notion that you might have a different perspective on things, or that there even is a different perspective to be considered. And I'm not very good at inserting that in if there's not space left for it, or if the questions aren't being asked. So I think Charts is very good at doing that. I mean, obviously they've got a Gaelic officer in yourself, Àdhamh, which goes a long way to it, but also just have a certain understanding and sensitivity and awareness in the organisation, which goes a long way. And it would be great if other organisations followed suit, I think. And yeah, I don't mean to bum you up too much because this is a Charts event, so, but yes.
Yeah, I'll give you the wee backhander later, Rhona. Don't worry about it. No, listen, that is just honestly so appreciated, because we've worked very hard on that. So really, really appreciate your words there. And we'll continue to try and make sure that space is set aside for just these kinds of conversations, and space for folk to input in the way that feels most natural to them, rather than having to conform to a kind of maybe preconceived Western outlook on things. It's something that's very close to my own heart. Any other thoughts from anybody on the panel coming from that, or thoughts of your own in terms of the question?
I think one thing that I would like to see, just following from the Scottish Languages Act, which I appreciate hasn't yet got royal assent. What a shame it even needs it. Is a change of culture across the board with the organisations. We're very, very fortunate that we've got Colin Nyordic and the Gaelic Books Council, for example, that takes care of Gaelic literature. But I think that does leave other literature organisations across Scotland to kind of presume, oh, well, Gaelic's sorted, so we don't really need to do anything about that. I would say that since the Gaelic Language Act and since funding has been available through Rhona NicDhùghaill and through the Gaelic Books Council, that we have seen growth in how much Gaelic literature, for example, is included in festival lineups and events. But I would say at grassroots level, it's still very commonplace for literature events to be programmed and for Gaelic to not even be considered, and for that, and when that's raised with, the response is, oh, we hadn't even thought about that, or we don't know any Gaelic writers, or we don't know how to approach this. So, that the work that organisations like Charts are doing, which is to put Gaelic arts and artists on a national platform, is really important, just because it's a key part of Gaelic awareness. So hopefully with the powers that the Scottish Languages Act will give to Gaelic and Scots speakers, we will be able to demand more of that quality, as opposed to the creation of language plans, which look great on paper, but it's debatable whether they have that much impact for speakers and for communities in question. But again, it comes down to us as a community, and I think as a community, even the learners, we're not that predisposed to making a fuss, to writing those pointed emails, to raising a question about our own inclusion. So with that enhancement of powers, hopefully will come opportunity, but it has to be something that we perhaps get out of that Gaelic box and start asking for.
Míle maith agat. Yeah, I think that's an incredibly good point, and it's sort of stimulated something in my own mind there that I wanted to sort of throw back to the panel, perhaps somebody we haven't heard from yet, or anybody else that has ideas on this one. I wonder whether you feel that you could apply this idea that Marcus is talking about with literature. Does that apply across the arts? Do we see that in visual arts as well, where perhaps Gaels and Gaelic outlook are not actually seen as something worthwhile making space for? I know, Rhona, you touched on that. But if that's so, then any thoughts on how we might remedy that situation?
I mean, I would agree with what Rhona said about it's a different attitude of culture, and there's people like Angus MacPhee, the weaver of grass, this folk art, outsider art, whatever you want to call it. And it's in all different areas of art, whatever you want to use it, but it's seen as craft, not art. It's got that label. I don't know how to fix it.
Oh, well, I know this is it. Hoshin Kersta and Tuairneir. But has anybody any thoughts then, perhaps on that more practical level about how we could develop this idea of trying to break out of the box, try to redefine the parameters that, Gaelic art it finds itself in at times, stuck in the craft box or in the other box even? Any thoughts on that from anyone? Deirdre, I can see you wagging a finger there. I wonder, would you like to input something for us?
Yes,
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I just didn't know if you meant the speakers. Yeah, there's a word been floating through my head, and it's market. And I'd like to ask the speakers, I don't know quite what my question is, but something around, what are your thoughts on either a market for the work that you make, or an absence of a market for the work that you make? Or do you have ideas about what a market could look like? And there's aspects of obviously productization and commercialization in that, which haven't come up at all. So been floating through my head for a while.
I think a lot of people who come to the islands as tourists want this stereotypical painting, piece of art, whatever it is, with blue skies, big sands, green grass. They're not really looking to the depth and the culture.
So superficial.
That's a big generalization, I know that, but that's what sells.
I think that's interesting, Gina, because that is that might just be the stage that they're at on their journey for engagement. And is there more that they could then progress on to? And if there is more, can they access that? So, I know myself, if I'm visiting somewhere and it's a culture or a place, whatever, that I'm not familiar with, I would probably engage on a superficial level. But something will have drawn me there in the first place. I would have had some motivation. And whatever I engage with, albeit superficial, I probably wouldn't want to engage at that level again, and would then progress on to look for something else. So that superficiality might actually be turned, it can often be looked at as having perhaps less kind of value, but actually it could be just one step on a pathway towards deeper engagement.
Yes, I think if you get people who come back who are drawn to the place, they do look deeper. But from a market point of view, and making any money out of it, really, that's the easy way out.
Interesting. But then, of course, that might consume one's resources, including time, and prevent. Yes, absolutely. And yeah, I think that's.
And you get into that rhythm of just doing that, and you don't have the headspace or the physical time to go off and do other things.
it's quite the balancing act.
But
I
think
noticed that
again
Oliver had, sorry, Deirdre, I just noticed that Oliver had unmuted himself, and I'm keen to hear his thoughts.
Yeah, I think the responsibility in the arts is with the curators and the galleries and the approach that they have, and there's a matter of time that's required. There's often a very clear set program, and it doesn't enable the development. So timescales are really important. So projects should, I believe, should run for not 3 months, 3 months, 3 months, but run for a year, 2 years. A wider ecosystem or ecology of the language needs to come from this. Yeah, we so often see the fine roses, and maybe people's only contact with Gaelic is through the mod, but you need the weeds and you need the green shoots, the rubbish Gaelic like my own, the GME Gaelic, because that's people are shy about that. They don't want to speak. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't speak very well. But I think the best part of Solmore for me was going into a group and having no Gaelic, but still being surrounded or just fumbling. And it takes real bravery for a curator to try to allow things to grow. And I think there have been things recently. The work for that was just at the V&A and was at Venice was far exceeded one theme. It grew arms and legs, and it enabled lots of ideas to feed in, and people to have lots of different points of contact, and it's from that you get a much wider transmission, and transmission is everything. Either it's from your henna or your shenna, or it's through multiple routes, and that's there's still a conservatism, I think, within the curating of culture in Gaelic, and there are projects which are stellar examples, but we need more kinds of memory and medium through which language to transmit and grow, and that's longer time scales is my main point.
It's very, very interesting as I was talking about this word earlier, farsinach, the breadth of practice here, a breadth of work within people's practice, and a breadth of opinion, leaves us with a very, very fertile ground to work in. And I think, Gaelic language and culture there is a community that exists around these things, and it brings people in from sometimes shockingly diverse places that you just would never have expected looking at it on paper. And I don't think there's any need for us to conflate ethnicity with community. People come in from the ethnic Gael side, they come in from 1,000 other different places, and we all meet in the language and culture and engage with one another there. Mary, I think, did I see you raising your hand, or if we go to you and then we'll come to Marcas again?
I think actually Oliver kind of hit some of the points I was going to make, and yes, there's commodification of certain aspects of the culture and the heritage, but I think it's that sort of opportunity to kind of platform the work, and as Oliver said, the kind of Venice example. I mean, that's really that's a really fantastic kind of example, and as much as possible, sort of making that work, which is kind of deeper and richer in scope, like I mean, the presentations that we've heard this evening, and making that visible to those people who may be kind of sort of coming to these places. I mean, I'm up in Harris, and some of my seasonal work at the moment is very visitor facing, and I would say the diversity of people here, in the summer, it isn't just a kind of one size fits all, and people are making connections with us that link to their own cultures as well, and I'm finding those conversations really interesting.
That's great. No, that's absolutely terrific, Mary. The only thing from my perspective is just looking at the time and feeling like we might be drawing towards the end of our time together. So I'm keen to hear from Marcas, and then just maybe get maybe a last comment or two from anybody who hasn't managed to put across what maybe was brewing away in their heads throughout the last couple of hours. Marcas, your courage.
I think just to return to the idea of marketability and like the commercial side, I think we have seen in more recent years how the Gaelic arts are coming through into more mainstream platforms, you know, figureheaded, you know, by musicians really, Capochelli and Runrig, but also, I don't know, we've had plenty of debates about it, but also Outlander, you know, which has done some work and done some other things as well. But I think we're still in a situation where very few people working across the spectrum in the Gaelic arts would be making a living out of it exclusively. I think, you know, and we've seen with funding that it's even tighter than it ever was before.
Are you saying it's a bit like the Crofton, Marcas?
Well, it could be if you want to use that analogy. But, you know, I speak from personal experience, having my second album application dinged by Creative Scotland, having had my next book dinged by the Books Council. You know, even in a Gaelic context, it's extremely competitive. I can think of only maybe two writers, myself and Ernest Fadri Campbell, that would work exclusively as writers, and I do that by combining you know, translation, editing, you know, various aspects within the literature sphere. So, you know, and I think that this also touches on what Gina said in terms of, you know, what's considered to be Ghàidhlig, what's considered to be marketable, what's considered to be commercial. In Edinburgh, we are starting to see how, you know, in a town built on literature and tourism, visitors are starting to look to Gaelic to get that deeper insight into Scottish culture, as opposed to the surface level aspects that have been lifted from Gaelic culture, like the Tuairneir and everything like that. And so that's why I'm really glad to be doing the work that I'm doing at the Balmoral, which, you know, is as colonial as anything else, but at least they are showing interest in Gaelic and are putting the language in front of, you know, an international audience, even on a smaller scale. But we need to be touching on what Gina said as well, you know, the perceptions that, oh, it's just traditional music, oh, it's just traditional crafts, oh, it's just poetry written in that language, it's not the big Scottish literature written in Gaelic with a bit of Scots, you know, around Burns Night. You know, it needs to be better supported and better integrated.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Any further thoughts, just perhaps briefly, before we wrap up this evening? I feel like we're only just getting into this, getting right into the thick of it, you know. But I'd very much like to hear from anybody that just maybe has a wee thought or two before we wrap up.
I had a couple of questions to throw out, which I don't expect us to answer, but if you want, I'll chuck them into the mix and leave them sticking to the wall, as they say. But it was just you know, the conversation that's been going there. I think there's two kind of questions that impact on that are still quite live, and we don't really have any kind of settled understandings of, and one of them is about how do we as a nation in Scotland, how do we view or how do we relate to Gaels, Gaelic culture, Gaelic language? What is it? What do we, how, I don't think we really know. And we don't have, you know, we're different from Wales. We haven't had certain legal battles that they've had, etc. We, you know, we know what the language is. We don't really have much of I don't think we have a kind of settled idea of what place the culture has in our kind of national. So that's kind of a question I think that's live. And I think the other question is maybe more kind of about within Gaelic Gaeldom, if that's the right thing to say, which is about how we view arts practice, and with, you know, having this very strong oral tradition, and that having a very established, very kind of strong presence, and how do we view more contemporary arts practice, visual art being a big part of that. And I think these are, again, I think that's still a live kind of thing that we're exploring. So I think both of those things are very much kind of in flux, being explored at the moment. And maybe the first question chimes with some international discussions that are going on around, you know, majority culture's relation to indigeneity, if we want to use that term, or whatever it might be. And I think, and you know, colonial histories and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, those two questions kind of sprung to me, so I just thought I'd chuck them in before we finish.
No, I you know, I don't think we could have any, you know, any better questions to finish off with, to take away into the night with us, you know, and lie awake, scratching our heads as we try to get to sleep, because, you know, as Gaels and you know, as people involved in the Gaelic world, in the language and the culture, you know, we're witnessing what is essentially attempts to recover from colonialism. It's to figure out exactly what was lost, to take stock of all sorts of really difficult things to come to terms with, and to figure out how we voice our feelings about these things. I remember talking to an Indigenous friend and us saying, you know, folk who very strongly belong to Western culture keep talking about some sort of impending apocalypse, but for us Indigenous people, it's already happened. You know, and certainly in Scottish Gaeldom, that some people may argue that that's only culturally, and I would probably argue back a bit, but it certainly, you know, begs the question of how do we emerge from the history, and how do we start to sort of allow the space and create the mechanisms for Gaels and Gael adjacent people who work with our language and culture, to bring it on into the future. So just to finish and just to summarise from my perspective about tonight's experience, I'd just like to say thank you so much. More and Marcas, to everybody who spoke. For me, the great takeaway is a word that I've mentioned 2 or 3 times already this evening that keeps coming back to me, which is farsineach. It's breadth. There's an incredible breadth, a breadth in the work, and breadth of opinions and experiences and perspectives. And of course, these 4 wonderful people that have spoken tonight, with all due respect to them, are only the tip of the iceberg. Even the 37 people who came back to us, you know, on the survey, are only the tip of the iceberg. And it's certainly a case that many West Highlanders are perhaps a wee bit backward coming forward with with their work at times. But perhaps conversations like we've had this evening, you know, can be, you know, just a starter for 10, and a chance for us all to go back to our communities and to continue these conversations. And we would very much like to think here at Charts, I know Engage will agree with us strongly on this, that we would be absolutely privileged to continue to facilitate conversations like this and raise the profile of our Gael artists and Gaelic adjacent artists, people working within our language and culture, and we will continue to do so. So if tonight weren't exciting enough, we also have another session with our very own Deirdre, who's in the room with us tonight. So a week tonight, we've got AITHNE again, this time a support and knowledge exchange. So that's going to be from 7 till 8 o'clock. I wonder if, look at that, Kirsten's way ahead of me there. She's already got the link into the box. I'd expect nothing less. And this is an online session designed for artists, curators, and culture organisations. So the very players in these questions that we're talking about here to potentially come together and engage with this Gaelic language and culture dynamic that we're talking about here, to connect, share, practice, explore ways to reach new audiences. So we'll hear from Dr. Deirdre McKenna of Cultural Documents and artist Gina Macdonald, who will share some insights into their experience showcasing creative work, collaborating across disciplines and reaching wider audiences. So there are actually a few spots left for this. So don't hang about, you know, as the kids say, get involved. And hopefully we'll see you a week tonight. So, my hang vol, huge thanks to everybody, to our speakers. Huge thanks to everyone at Charts that has helped us get this off the ground, not least to Kirsten, who's facilitated the whole thing. She's done amazing work to make this happen. She'll never admit it and just sit there calmly looking like nothing actually happened. But wow, brilliant to have worked with her on this. Thanks to Creative Scotland for their input on this, to Ian Oifigear for doing us a right square turn and making sure our phrasings come through to those who weren't able to engage in the Gaelic language. And I don't know, Kirsten, have I left anything out? Are there any glaring gaps in my thanks?
I think also just to reiterate your thanks to Engage, who've been excellent partners on this.
Absolutely.
The kind of artists who've all taken part, who you've already thanked, the kind of wider contributions, and also to yourself for facilitating this evening and kind of opening up these questions. And we do hope that we'll see you all here hopefully next Thursday as well, and hopefully maybe continue on some of these conversations we had tonight and potentially pick up some of these wider questions which Rhona introduced, which really struck a chord in the chat, seemed to resonate and be already kind of in the minds of everybody else. These kind of questions sitting within the wider cultural context.
Mm-hmm. That's it then, summed up beautifully, Kirsten. Thank you so much. And all that needs to be said is Oifigear, is Hugh Hill show. Night, everyone.